Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Destination Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Stoker. We have a really fun conversation for you today. In all seriousness, it's probably one that should have happened years ago at this point, because my guest today is really influential in our space, and I think it's about time we had him on. So I have Rafat Ali, and he is the CEO and founder of Skift, which I know many of you are aware of and many of you use. So Rafat, thank you so much for joining me today.
Stoked to be on your podcast. I'm sure that's a joke nobody has told you before or said to you before.
It never gets old. It never gets old. I like it. Well, Rafat, if you've heard the show, you know that I love to start out with just a couple of simple questions, get the conversation going. And for you, it's no different. I would love to know, it's like picking a favorite child, but I'm going to ask you anyway, what is your dream destination? If you could go anywhere in the world, where would it be?
So the problem with dream destinations, these are places that are either war-torn or have some issues going. So Socotra Island, which is an island that's part of Yemen, the country in the Middle East. Yemen is obviously war-torn and tons of stuff happening. And Socotra Island is this island off the coast that belongs to Yemen that is among the most unique flora and fauna in the world because it's so isolated. So like the trees grow upside down. Like it's a very, if you just Google it, you'll see. And there used to be a flight from Abu Dhabi, so you don't even have to go to mainland Yemen, and the tours were taken. But there was just a mini war between Saudi and UAE over the control of the Socotra Island. And so that flight got canceled, and actually a bunch of tourists, American tourists as well, got stranded for, this is like last month. So it's as late as last month. Wow. So anyway, long story short, fascinating place. You can do sort of like a week trips. You have to go with an agency just for safety reasons and just, organizing reasons. So I want to go with my son, who's now 11. So by the time I go, maybe he'll be okay in the next few years. He'll be older too. And so I want to do a dad and son trip.
I love that. So how did you find out about the Socotra Island? Because I had never heard of that before. I've had, 450 interviews or I guess 430 interviews at this point, and I have yet to hear someone say the Socotra Island. And so I'm shocked. I'm shocked that you've come up with a new one. How did you learn about this?
Yeah, no, I don't know. It's just before I started Skift, I built and sold a previous company, not in travel. And then I took a 2-year sabbatical. I mean, it wasn't meant to be 2 years. It just kind of kept on going. I kept on traveling. And I was researching sort of weird, isolated places to go. And so Socotra came up in that research. I didn't end up going. At that point, it was okay to go, but I didn't end up going. And so that's why it's on my mind. And lots of history in Yemen, but obviously Yemen is off the map for now. So yeah, I would it's just one of those where I've had it in my mind for like, when I wrote my farewell note in my previous company, it was mentioned that you may see my head pop up in these types of places, and Socotra was in it.
So this has been on the list
for almost 15 years.
Yeah, it's time to go. It's been on the list for a while. As soon as that flight comes back, I think you got to make it happen.
I know. Now with my son, which I newly, I have 2 younger kids, and so we're just at the age where we can do sort of solo kids trip. And so, which I want to take advantage of as long as time permits.
Yep, I'm in the same boat. I've got 4 kids from the ages of 14 to 6. And
wow. So the actually, yeah.
Yeah, showing your kids the world is one of the joys in life.
It really is. Yeah.
Well, tell me, Rafat, about a travel memory that you've experienced, something that stands out to you that is maybe a special memory that you'd like to share with everybody.
Tons of them, but my wife and I went to Algeria and before our first son was born. So this must have been a while ago, 12 years ago. And we did the New Year's over there. I'm going to say like 2011 New Year or whatever. And we didn't know what we were doing, honestly. It's just like Morocco, which is next to it, is very well known from a tourist circuit perspective. Algeria is not. It's much, much bigger. It's the largest landmass in Africa, and not at all wired for tourists. Anyway, we went to this gateway town from Algiers, the capital, to this town, which is the desert gateway to Sahara. If you want to do Sahara desert tourism, you go to this town in Algeria. Little knowing that, one, it was a very sensitive area from like terrorist activity. And two, there were only two hotels in town, and they were just god awful hotels. And so we had some experiences there. That's memorable. But the one I want to tell you is this: one of the nights we're there, this French couple came. English was very hard there. This French couple came and said there's a music festival in town, and they could speak a little bit of English, so we chat. And then there's this music festival in town. I said like, oh, what are the chances? It'll take us. And so we went with them, and it turns out the most well-known music festival in North Africa of what they call Tuareg music, which is electric guitar just played in a very different way in that part of the world. Oh. And these famous artists that are very famous in that part of the world were playing that night. And this is Algeria, in sort of the desert tribal area, where these men and women are built big. Like these are like tribal people that are built big, wearing their traditional garment and like grinding against each other in like full public view, fully clothed. And like, so we were looking at it, what the hell is happening? And it was just such a surreal, and there was no internet there, so we couldn't even share these memories until like a week after we came back type stuff. So that still is stuck in our heads as one of the most surreal and sort of mind-bending experiences. And we were not even taking anything. It was just like, total sober.
Well, I want to congratulate you, one, for having the courage to go some of the places that you've gone, but two, for giving me two answers to these questions that have never been shared on the show before, because Algeria also has not come up as a travel memory.
Yeah, it's probably not going to come up for another 430 episodes.
Yeah, I love it. Well, Rafat, it's fun to learn a little bit about you and learn it through travel, because I think you learn a lot about people just by hearing their travel habits. Courage pops up to me when I hear some of the things that you've done and want to do. It's also something that every entrepreneur has to have in order to do what we do. And so I'd love to have you maybe share a little bit about your background and what led you to Skift. You mentioned that you had a previous company. I'd love to hear about what that previous company was and the journey that led you to where you are today.
Yeah, so because it's a lot. I mean, I'm 51 now, so I've had enough of a life. So I'll keep it short. But was born in UK, brought up in US early years, in Denver. Went back to India, grew there from 6 till 24. Did my undergrad there. Came to US to do my master's. I came from India to Indiana, went to IU, did my master's in journalism. And then this was I came out of school right before September 11th. So like 9 months before September 11th happened. So the end of 2000. And and I moved to New York, as everybody does, I guess, if you were in media back in those days, I guess still.
Yeah.
And tried to look for a job. September 11th hadn't happened, but the economy had turned because the Web 1.0 bubble had burst. And then I was having a hard time getting a job. So I started this blog early. I was very early in the blogging world. Like I started blogging as soon as I came to US because I heard about blogging. And back in Bloomington, Indiana, I was doing like a personal blog on my experiences as a new student coming into US and all the fascinating things for me at that point that I was writing about. And then started a professional blog covering the business of media, because that was my interest. My interest was the business of media in those days, early days of Yahoo and AOL and all those others. And so I was covering that, and then looking for a job, long story short, didn't necessarily pan out. I moved to London because I was born there, so I was a citizen. And again, tried to find a job there, couldn't. And then this blog I was doing reporting on the media industry using the blog format. just as a solo person. All the stuff that you see now, the creator economy of 2026, I was doing the 2002 version of it.
Okay.
Or whatever, 2003 version of it. And then I just jumped into it full time in London because people in the industry started emailing me to say, do you accept ads? And I said, oh, I can make money off this. And so I got some money started there. And then I just, as a journalist turned entrepreneur, that's my story. And that became a full-fledged company that was covering the business of music, entertainment, gaming, newspapers, magazines, video, audio, etc., going digital on the web. So content, quote unquote content, right?
Yeah.
And the blog was called Paid Content, which is kind of not meant to be a business, but it turned into this blog that at its peak in like 2006 or 7 was read by everybody in the media industry, all the business people. We had interviews with, at that point, Rupert Murdoch, all those people.
Yeah.
And it was not covering traditional, it was covering the transition of traditional media into new media. And the reason I bring that part up is Skift, which I started obviously 2012. A lot of what we cover even 13 years later is that transition.
Yeah.
And not necessarily just from offline to online, because that's only one way of looking at the world. Skift, the word, is the Norwegian word for shift. And shift basically like transformation. And so we've been covering the story of transformation of the travel industry in every form, in all its facets of that word for the last 13 and a half years now. So the seed was, I guess, similar. The seed of Skift was similar to what the lessons I learned with Paid Content, covering the business of media, digital media in that case. And I built that into, there was about 20, 25 people at our peak. We had a few million in revenue. And then in 2008, we sold it to the Guardian newspapers out of UK. And I had a 2-year lockup. So I stayed 2 years. Obviously, the financial crisis happened right after we sold. And so all the plans that Guardian had for us and we had for us all went out of the window.
Mm.
And so, I lasted about 1.5 years of my 2-year lockup. And then they said, just go. We'll just pay you out. And so from there, the first place I went, which is relevant to Skift, is I went to Iceland a week after the volcano had stopped. Remember that volcano in 2010 that was, stopped everything?
Yes.
And so it just so happened that I had booked a trip to Iceland as my first ever sort of solo trip on leisure. And also my date was such that on its own, volcano stopped like a week before me going. So I didn't even have to change my plans. And I went and sort of got hooked onto solo travels back then. And so I traveled for 2 years, documented my journey on social media through photos. And I was very struck by how me as a journalist that never was into photojournalism, people really reacted to my photos. And I sort of realized that, you can tell a story through photos. And again, these were early naive days of social media, not the sort of toxic cesspool it is now. And so the genesis of Skift didn't necessarily come out of my travels, but certainly how widely I traveled defined the worldview of how eclectic we want the lens on the business of travel to be. As in, look at it in the broadest sense possible, bring other elements from the world, geopolitics, cultural issues, social issues, etc., into the business of travel and make it more exciting and more sort of big picture. And that is certainly the journey we have been on since 13 and a half years. And that's why, for us, the biggest thing is connect the dots across these silos that the industry sits in. Your world of tourism, to hotels, to airlines, to cruises, to the tech players. So we, as you know, look at it from all of these sectors together. Common lessons, you look at the biggest common thread among all of them is the travelers, right? So we're focused on very much on the changing traveler consumer behavior as a tying point for all of these sectors.
Interesting. So you started with the blog that was kind of covering the media, and because of where you were in media and the access that you had, I would argue that you were probably on the front end of recognizing the shifts that were taking place and pretty plugged into the early shifts that were happening in the space. I think that's fascinating because you really got to watch the world change from the inside almost.
Correct. Yeah, we
And
were documenting the story as much as we were part of the story.
yeah. Yeah. And I look at now you're somewhat doing the same thing in the travel space, and tourism is actually several years, I would say, behind some of those media organizations that you were reporting on before. And so it had to have felt a little bit like you were going back in time and watching the same thing happen again in the travel space. Is that fair to say?
100%. Yeah, and I'm glad you picked on up. So one of the things we said from the beginning of Skift, again, we were outsiders to the travel industry. I know history in travel when we started Skift. My co-founder, Jason Clampett, he was on the consumer side. He used to work at Frommer's as like a writer, one of the guidebook writers, and then did some other work in the company as well. And so his was the closest we had to like the business of travel. And I think we had some naive view of the changes that had happened because of the web in media, finance, and tech sectors. Instead of the web 1.0 wave and the web 2.0 wave hasn't yet come to travel, but it will. As in the silos of these different sectors will collapse, particularly in consumers' minds, because they don't care. And so the silos that we've seen collapsing in the media industry and the finance and the tech, and how the industry got sped up because of technology, had not come to travel. And so when we were early in Skift, that was the thing that we have to raise the metabolism of the industry to sort of catch up to that, which manifested for us in being sort of very early on, very breaking news for let's just cover fast and furious.
Yeah.
Which, as you remember, it wasn't like a very newsy industry. It's not like daily there's a breaking news happening and you're going to have a live blog that's going to cover, minute by minute, which happens in tech, has happened in tech for a long time now.
Yeah.
So we brought that metabolism, if you will, to the business of travel. And the validation of that early on was that people who were sort of aligned with travel, even if they're not in travel, say, "Oh, we never thought we would read travel news daily." What do you mean? Like, how can it not be daily? So it's one of those. So, yeah. So to your original point, yes, exactly. That's what it was.
Yeah. And I think that's fascinating because even though you're in completely different industries between the two organizations, you're actually participating in a very similar transition for both categories that you've played in. I'm curious, you said that you started Skift in 2012. Every business that reaches kind of a point of success, I'll let you know when I hit mine, every business has kind of that tipping point where they're like, oh man, we made this decision and now we really feel like that was a point that led to our success. So what was the tipping point where you were like, oh, this Skift thing is really going to work in the travel space?
I would say, there are a few smaller ones before the one that I'm going to describe you, but the main one was Skift Global Forum, which is our flagship conference that so many of people in the industry know, have spoken at, have attended, et cetera, et cetera. Now in its this year will be year 14, I think. So that was started in 2014, in that it was October that year. Now it's moved to September. So to mid-September, everybody knows it's going to be Skift Global Forum. Whether it's second week or third week. And we had decided 6 months before October when we did the conference that we should do a conference, and it has to be a different one. So we came up with what ended up initially being called by others, not by us, as like the TED of the travel industry, as in a lot of talks on stage, in addition to interviews. But it was a very sort of single stage experience. You're sitting through the whole day, editorial heavy. Like networking is an afterthought. It's editorial heavy. That's what we knew. And so It was at the Times Center here in New York. It was year one, single day conference, and we sold out of the tickets like a month before the conference.
Wow.
It was like, I still remember 13 years, 14 years later, that Times Center has 378 seats because of that milestone of us selling out 378 seats. And then literally people bought sponsorships just to attend the conference because the tickets were sold out. So we made, at that time we were 10 people. So it was a very small company. So that really put us on the map. And then like, I remember Wendy Perrin, who a lot of people know in the travel industry, tweeted this, which we used for many years after, that this is the TED of the travel industry that the industry needed, something like that.
Oh, cool.
And so we used that endorsement, if you will, for years to come after that, to obviously market it. So that was the moment I said, okay, we're creating something. And you could see the feedback from the people who attended it, like, oh, this is really meaningful. Our coverage is meaningful. And that we have something here. And so that's why events has become an important part of such an important part of our business. It's not the majority of our business, but it is the largest chunk of our business in terms of revenue. And now we do about a dozen conferences in different parts of the world, geographic conferences, topic focused, and AI one is coming up in June. That is going to be in year third, and this should come as no surprise to anybody. Is doing very well, with obviously all the noise around it. And we do one on aviation, et cetera, et cetera.
I love it. I think that if the event sells out that much before the actual date of the event, I love that you remember the 378 seats. It's very clear there's demand, right? There's obviously demand for what you're doing. Let's look at the company today, because you said there was 10 people at that time. Events is now a portion of your business, but not small portion.
It was not a small. It's the largest chunk. It's just not majority of the business.
Got it. So what does the business look like today, and how many people do you have?
So we're 10x now, just so happens. 100-ish people in 17 different countries. We went virtual. Back then we were a physical company, 10 of us based in New York, in a small, it was not co-working. We had moved out of co-working, so it was a small physical office. And with COVID, we, much like everybody else, shut down the offices. We had office in New York, the main office. We had a small co-working space in London, something in Singapore. So we shut all of them down. And so we decided pretty early on that we're going to go virtual. So we had to lay off 1/3 of our staff. We went from 60 people to 40 with COVID, unfortunately. But again, obviously this was all meant to rescue the company.
Yeah.
And then we came out of that, 2-3 years, the same as industry. Like we lost, I say it now, if I look back at our revenue trajectory, we lost 3 years. But that's pretty much everybody in the travel industry lost for years. But it also reset our business. Profitability is much, much, much better now. I mean, it's solidly profitable as a business, which is a huge achievement in the media information sector, if anybody knows media. We're a fully virtual company, 100% remote, work from home, work from whatever co-working space, but certainly remote. Our hubs are US, UK, and India in terms of hiring. And then we've learned that you can't be like 100% will hire for every job. It'll be like the world is open. You have to sort of geographically focus on countries for just ease of management, taxes, HR, everything else. So US, UK, and India have become our hubs. And then we have odd people here and there in Philippines or Panama or Colombia or, other places in the world. And so that's the business, and it's obviously much, much bigger than what it used to be.
Yeah.
We've acquired 5 or 6 smaller businesses along the way, including one in the directly in your world in the tourism space. Now it's called Skift Advisory. It was a tourism consultancy called 2031, which was based in Canada, and they were well known in Canada and the Middle East, and we've acquired them and obviously grown them since, and is focused on destination development, consulting, etc., etc. It's moved on. It's expanded from just tourism to we're doing a bunch of stuff in the hospitality world now, some of the stuff in airline world, but a lot of common lessons. So yeah, that's the business today.
I love it. So congrats, first of all, for building a global company and after surviving the pandemic, growing even more after the pandemic. It's pretty amazing what you've done. And now you operate holistically across multiple components of the travel space, including, like you said, airlines, cruise lines, and some of the other travel things, much beyond DMOs. Guys, have you created your profile yet on Tourism IQ? Tourism IQ has become one of the very best resources in the destination marketing industry. You can see all the latest jobs there, and Lori Farr, who many of you may know from when she was doing the travel vertical, she's the editorial director at Tourism IQ, and she puts together all the latest available jobs. She tells us where people have gone when they take a new job. It's called People on the Move. She posts the latest RFPs. We have a lot of thought leadership there from different leaders in the industry. And really, Tourism IQ has become one of the very best places for you to develop professionally in the destination marketing space. It's got all the resources you need, and it's growing every day. We have over 530 active profile users. These are people that have created profiles on the site. And then we have another 2,800 active lookers who haven't created a profile, but they are there consuming the content and revisit the site on an ongoing basis. This site is growing every day. I'm so proud of what it's become, and I need everyone to go create a profile and see the incredible resources that are being posted for our industry on a daily basis. mytourismiq.com is the URL. Please go check it out. Fill out a profile on mytourismiq.com. My listeners are primarily DMOs, and one of the things that I wanted to be able to ask you to help the DMOs that are listening is, in looking holistically at the travel space, what do destinations need to understand in order to successfully service the space?
Yeah, I mean, look, DMOs are a unique part of the travel industry, meaning they're not selling tickets or, they're not selling seats or beds or anything physical. They're selling physical, the city, or the region, but they don't own any of that stuff.
Right.
So it's depending on the part of the world, it's either a public or a private or a mix, right? Mostly a mix or public. So their KPIs on how they are evaluated are anywhere from fuzzy to non-existent. Which is a thing that we have pushed back on over the years, and sort of asked some of the dumb questions that have gotten us into trouble, and I'm sure we'll get into some of that as well. But you had an original question. The original question was
just, what do destinations need to understand?
It's a tough world out there. Yeah, it's a tough world out there. I'm not giving you any breaking news. Certainly in our part of the world that both of us are sitting in, oh my goodness, it's a tough year. And so, but again, should not come as news to anybody, I hope, is that this is the permanent state of the world for years to come, meaning it's not going to settle down and on normalcy. This is the normalcy. And so how do you operate? What are the channels of distribution, if you will, that bypass or create new channels that reaches the target consumer? Maybe the target consumer is different, totally different, turns out, could be. If you were used to travelers from this part of the world or this part of the country, turns out this year it's going to be zero from there, and you have to figure out a whole new thing. Happened during COVID, obviously. That was by force. Everybody had to figure out new sources, domestic became big in all different parts of the world in many different ways. US was part of that, obviously, huge boom. That boom part is over. I think the thing that destinations know very well, but also this is not just a tourism issue, this is a larger quality of living issue that all of us face, is the costs that have dramatically increased in our daily living. I live in New York, so I'm sort of ground zero on like the costs part.
Yeah.
And that is affecting travel. So the K-shaped economy, that's a phrase that's been cropping up a lot over the last year and a half, 2 years, is real. And as much as the travel industry on earnings calls, public companies, hospitality, airlines, etc., have been saying, oh, we're holding up because the luxury end of the market is holding up. But that one line is hiding so much of challenges in the larger economy and our daily living. And we cannot, as an industry, just subsist on premium travelers. In fact, middle class is the one that created the modern American tourism industry, road trips, etc. Like that was the core of it. I wrote this article about 2 months ago, with the headline like how the middle class how the lodging industry abandoned the middle class. And it got a lot of reaction. Shouldn't be surprised by it, but the reality is like destinations have to figure out a way to keep travel affordable. And it's easier said than done. It's not just in DMO's hands, because in fact, it's less in DMO's hands than anything else. But all the issues that DMOs deal with, homelessness, etc., in cities, particularly in the US, I just think it's a lot more complicated. And our understanding of the DMO world, fair to say, was pretty surface level over the years. And we have evolved ourselves as a company and journalists, understanding the various other tentacles that tourism boards have, and the levers they have and the levers they have no control over. So anyway, that's a long way of saying the world's complicated.
Yeah.
And your job is not just marketing. It's not purely management. Like they said, it's not DMO, it's management, not marketing. Yes and no. Because there's only so much you have in control. So it's a tough gig, particularly in the US. I mean, you're competing against destinations that have hundreds of millions of dollars in budgets in other parts of the world, literally hundreds of millions.
Yeah.
Which, if you add all the US tourism boards, it probably won't get to that number.
I think that's fascinating, because what you're basically doing is telling an industry that for years and years and years basically operated the same way. There wasn't a lot of change in the destination marketing industry. And then since COVID hit, we've been in kind of this constant state of change and evolution.
Yeah, COVID really changed everything. I mean, such a cliche, but and I sort of come back to that cliche in the sense that I went through a phase of, in COVID, it felt like everything's changed. You came out of it and then you said, actually a lot of things are the same. And then you sort of come back to the other end of it again, because now you're 6 years away from COVID original start date. Right about now, what is it, March we're sitting here? Sorry, no, February.
February, yeah.
We were just beginning, if you remember, 2020 February, and we were saying, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. And so I think we have a more nuanced sense of things that have changed and things that have accelerated, meaning there was some stuff that was already in play. But just the costs are really, that has totally changed since COVID on everything. Operating cost, consumer cost, everything. Like Vegas, you know this because you live in this world. The reason why Vegas is hurting is, yes, the Canadians are not coming, and certainly all that, but the lower end of the market has collapsed because they fleeced everything out of the traveler.
Yeah.
And they said, okay, we're not going to do this. And so, and like so much so, the tourism board had to go to the stakeholders the hotels and stuff and say, you have to like do something about this. So anyway, I don't know if they have, but that's my general understanding, that the tourism board actually had to talk to the stakeholders and say, which is rare, relatively rare. Like they don't dictate pricing, but they're showing them the numbers, and they know the numbers themselves.
That's why that's such an important principle, is because we keep thinking, well, soon we'll be through the change and we'll go back to normal. And what you're saying is, no, the chaos that you've experienced over the last 6 years is likely to continue. And to give everybody some ideas of why I agree with you, Rafat, on that is, yes, it started with COVID, but then we went through a labor shortage right after COVID. Then we went through, inflation was a thing and that's not over by any means. And then, elections, and now AI has come out, which is completely changing consumer behavior. And that's only going to accelerate the continued change. And so I think anybody that's waiting for things to go back to normal, I got bad news for you. And Rafat, it sounds like you have bad news too. This is normal. This is how it's going to be. And we have to learn how to be successful in a state of change and not wait until we get back to kind of the comfort that we felt for years and years and years, where travel grew by 6% year over year, almost regardless of what we were doing. We actually have to get really scrappy and solve some of the problems that we're dealing with on the fly, instead of having, a 10-year initiative that leads to the continued growth.
The good news, because let's talk about some of the good news, is that, experiences over things, the cliche that has been around for a while, like people are choosing experience over things, is a real thing. Whether it's growing as fast as we thought it would, questionable. In fact, we've done stories on how the travel's wallet share of overall spending of consumers has decreased in the last 2 years, from 8% to 4%. I actually did this story using credit card data. But still, like the young people, not just in the US, but other parts of the world, a part of the world that I know well, India, where travel as an aspiration didn't exist 25 years ago, and hundreds of millions of people coming into middle class are aspiring to travel, which was not even in their consideration set, which means that the aspiration to travel remains high. And I almost say the fact that travel has held up so well relative to the larger turmoil in the world is still pretty admirable.
Yeah.
And it shows that people will want to continue to travel. It's just that the ways to reach them, times to reach them, what motivates them to travel to one place versus the other, all of that is changing. Social media channels, one comes up, another goes out of favor. One gets banned almost got banned in our country, didn't, but could have. So it's just all the channels that you think are permanent or will be here for a while could change in an instant. Chinese travelers gone, in at least the long haul markets, etc., which were a steady source, and now Indian travelers were rising until I'm talking US, until this year.
Yeah.
US-India relations challenges there, the visa challenges, the students, which was the biggest population in US, the biggest population of foreign students, Indians became that over the last few years, surpassing Chinese.
Yeah.
Suddenly that's dropped because, of the visa issues. And Indian travelers that were coming, they've not stopped coming, but they've definitely been hurt this year. So again, all these assumptions that we go in with can change, which is why I think no destination, however internationally advantaged it is, should ignore their locals or local tourism or regional tourism. One of the lessons we learned in COVID that we sort of kind of forgot over the last few years is back to being true again.
Yep.
The drive tourist or the local tourist that will spend a weekend or extended weekend.
I think that's great advice. And I also think it's not a bad thing that we're going to be in this constant rate of change, because change forces innovation. And I think this industry was ripe for innovation, and I think we'll see a lot of improvements in the way things are done over the next several years. For the sake of time, Rafat, I do want to get back to some of the questions that you mentioned that you've asked that you think may have gotten you in a little trouble, because I really feel like those are the exact questions that are going to spark the innovation that needs to come. So tell me about some of the questions you've had that you feel like might get you in a little bit of trouble.
Yeah, I mean, we're a little bit of a few, I'm going to say 2 years, maybe 3 years removed from the big controversy that happened with us, which was that we used to do, in every sector, we still do it, because there are a lot of public companies. We do like the top paid hotel CEOs, the top paid airline CEOs. Once a year, depending on their public filings, we used to do a story. Not controversial. You could tell Hilton CEO gets paid the most, or Uber CEO gets paid the most in this sector, whatever, that type of stuff. They didn't care. Whatever. It was a nice format. Every business sector has a format like this in their own trade publications. We came to tourism. They're not obviously public companies, but they're nonprofits, which means that they file their 990s, which is the US nonprofit form. And yes, it's not as updated as the public company filings, but you get a directional sense of the state of the nonprofit, the revenues they're getting, the expenses they're getting, including the salaries of some of the top, management of these. So we just decided 2 years ago, 3 years ago, whatever it was, I forget exactly, that we should also add tourism CEOs to that cycle of stories. And we did a story where we basically took public information. Anybody, you and I, anybody can go in and collect this data. We just happened to put it in a single place and publish the story with not even that much editorializing. It was just analysis of this seems that. So the top, whatever, I forget, it was 25, I think, most well-paid CEOs in the tourism DMO world.
I remember the article well.
And it exploded, fair to say. So it landed on day one of IPW, which was totally random. Like, we didn't plan it on, it was a Monday, and usually we publish some larger features on a Monday. It just so happens it was day one. Everybody in the US tourism ecosystem was in a single room, wherever IPW was. I don't know where it was. And so it created this paranoia about holy moly, what did Skift publish? And Skift is attacking us. And fair to say, I did some editorializing on my LinkedIn, which the funny part is I've said all of those things separately in their annual conferences, in front of them at their conferences, giving a talk on stage. But somehow all of it blew up, and we lost hundreds of thousands of dollars of pulled advertising from a bunch of the tourism boards. Tourism boards were and are a small part of our business, like 35% of our business is small. Still, hundreds of thousands of dollars as a bootstrapped company. Those things matter.
It's a lot of money.
And we don't know what we lost by people not even wanting to spend money with us anymore, right?
Yeah.
So I thought the reaction was petty. And there was a coordinated attempt by various DMO CEOs to say we have to boycott Skift. I mean, I know this for a fact. It's not even like a secret or anything like that. So to which our reaction was editorial, and my reaction was, we exposed some insecurity that we should probably explore more. So our journalists at that point and our editors did at least 2 other follow-up stories on what goes into determining the salary of a CEO. And then I forget, there was another third story. And, my reaction to that was, you loved everything about Skift up until that story. How does that work? And now we're total crap? It doesn't work that way. And so we have built back some of those bridges. I think one of the lessons we learned, and this is what I mentioned a little before, is that one thing that did come out of it is we had a better understanding, because we did talk to a bunch of folks in the industry who didn't react this way, but certainly wanted to give us feedback, and said you should have a more better sense of the role that DMO plays in a destination. And so they're dealing with homelessness, they're dealing with politicians, they're dealing with all stakeholders. So I think that really did help us understand better the ecosystem, and particularly in the US, just because it's so different in the US than other parts of the world. So that really helped us to understand that ecosystem. And then I think we've built back bridges. Some people will hold grudges for a long time, whatever. Nothing we can do about it. But I have to credit Don Welsh from our friend from DI, who helped a lot in sort of building the bridges back to the industry. He really understood why Skift spotlight matters and how it will long-term make the conversation and the business of tourism and DMOs better. And so I give him credit for that. He was really one of the first people to call me after the stories dropped.
Yeah.
And so I think we have a better sense of it now. And I'm glad that whatever. I mean, the money part for us as a fiercely independent media company, we know this. Like this, we know it's going to happen. And we're also now more deeply embedded, not just on the leisure tourism side, but also on the meetings and events side of the world. We have a vertical called Skift Meetings, which covers deeply the sort of DMO/CVB's role in it. And we obviously we now have Skift Meetings Forum, which in large part is driven by attendance and speakers and sponsors from the tourism world.
Great. Anytime something like that happens, yes, there's fallout and stuff like that. But the reality is, for one, it allows your organization to get more deeply embedded in the industry and understand
100%.
it better. And it also helps the industry have conversations that they were terrified to have before.
Correct. And they said, like, you make our job with the politicians harder, to which our reaction was, it's not our job to make your job easier with the politicians as a media information company.
Yeah.
And that if you consider yourself a public servant, which many of them do, I mean, not all of them, but many of them do, technically they are as a nonprofit, then you should be up for scrutiny. And the other part is, it used to be that stories in local media used to come out in individual destinations. In fact, there are many examples of CEOs having to resign based on local media coverage. As you know, in US, local media is gone. And so that accountability layer is over. I mean, for most part. And that sort of, we didn't necessarily approach it with that in mind, but it just somehow became one.
Absolutely. I think it's an interesting case study on transparency and the importance of transparency, and do we really have transparency at different times. I think it was a good conversation starter that even if it caused short-term problems, I actually think it's going to help the industry in the long term. Rafat, I want to end with some advice from you, because you've seen a lot.
Oh, I can take some advice if you have for me, please.
Rafat, I've got tons of advice for you. No, I would love to have you, maybe just with all the things that you've learned, if you could share with the majority of destination marketers something that you feel like they could take away of value from what you've learned from all the different exposure you've had to our industry, this would be a great time to share that with them.
Yeah, well, thank you for asking that, because I actually have I think, a good one, which is, as much as you want to be focused on tech and marketing dollars or DMO structures or whatever, all the stuff that we write about daily. The one thing that I've been increasingly saying to every destination because I travel a lot in the world, meeting all types of folks from different destinations, in not just the private sector, but officials and government ministers, and in US the same thing. the biggest thing that I've learned and want people to take away is always bet on your own people to tell the story. And I know that sounds soft, but the reality is a lot of the destinations look outside for expertise. They look for agencies or consultants, et cetera, to help them. But the best way to market your destination at the end of the day is your own people. And I've said this to the only advisory board any type of board that I sit on is Discover Puerto Rico, which, because usually I avoid sitting on any boards for conflict of interest. Discover Puerto Rico, my association goes back to Hurricane Katrina and us as an organization helping the destination recover just through, us providing news information for them that, at no cost or whatever, that we would not to other destinations. And, Puerto Rico is a case study. I mean, how can it not be even now with the Super Bowl that just happened, the halftime show? It's all the conversation that's happening. And like betting on your own people to tell the story and how that helps market the destination. Under the previous regime, whatever the term is, of the people, Brad Dean and Leah, who's there, who I know you know.
Yeah.
They did an incredible job of using the local stories to tell the story of Puerto Rico. Yes, a Caribbean destination with sun and sand, whatever, but they moved beyond that. And that was what I was telling them all along, is like, to not market yourself as a Caribbean destination, because you're then competing against every other Caribbean destination and you cannot compete on costs. Just cannot. Part of US versus cheaper destination. So you have to tell the unique story of Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
The people, the music, the food, the energy of the youth, et cetera, et cetera. And that's helped them a lot. I give the same advice, and I'll cut it, I'll close here. I give the same advice when I go to Saudi. Saudi as a destination, spending lots of money to try and attract travelers to them. And, they've spent hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions, just on marketing. I'm not talking about the actual projects. Those are tens of billions, hundreds of billions. And when you go to Saudi, one, it's a very mind-altering experience because you have certain sense of what Saudi is if you've never been. And then you go there and you see sort of the young people that are very dynamic, high energy, filled with hope. And tons of creative stuff is happening there. And so what I've told them is like, why don't you focus on showcasing the energy, the creative energy of the youth? Forget tourism marketing. Focus on the creative energy of the youth. Mm-hmm. And so the other lesson is like, tourism marketing does not have to be marketing directly about the destination. In fact, if you build a larger story around food and culture and music and creative energy of the youth, which I think is infectious in any part of the world, then you're doing a better long-term job to help people come in, and not just for tourism, but maybe they'll move, maybe they'll do business, maybe they'll do conferences there, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So that would be my, I don't know how concrete an advice that is, but that's sort of my takeaway and my passion, certainly.
I like the advice that you gave to the Saudis, because what you're basically saying is none of the story matters if the destination isn't cool. And the thing that makes the destination cool is the hope and vibrancy of the young people in the destination. If you can demonstrate how cool that is, people are going to want to go. And I think that's great advice. The other thing that I think is really important that you said, and I'm going to put a little bit of different wording to it, but I think we're saying the same thing. And this is what you told Brad and Leah and the Puerto Rico team. You cannot outsource vision. The vision has to come from the core members of the destination. And I think there's too many people in the destination space that outsource their vision to an agency or a strategic partner or someone else. And the reality is you have to build the vision, and then you can outsource components that lead towards that vision. But if somebody else is setting the vision, you're kind of setting yourself up to fail because you can't deliver on it.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's You said it very well.
Well, Rafat, this has been fantastic. I appreciate you taking the time to come on, and I'm grateful you shared some of your story with us, and even were a little vulnerable about some of the experiences that you've had with Skift. If people want to learn more about you, Skift, your organization, or anything else, what's the best way for them to do so?
Yeah, I mean, certainly skift.com. And then I'm very accessible. I think people know this already. And if you go to LinkedIn, I used to be in other social media. All of it is, thankfully, I'm off all of the other channels and just LinkedIn, and that's enough. So if you go to LinkedIn, then Rafat Ali, I'm usually connected to pretty much everybody in the industry, but my job is to connect to everybody in the industry.
Yeah.
And so I'm there. I post frequently about different things in the industry and obviously growing our business and generally larger things in the world. And so those are the two. And if you want to come to our conferences, if in the tourism world, I would say the next conference that they would like is our AI conference. That's in June. So it's, I think, June 4th or something, or 3rd. If you go to live.skift.com, you'll see. And that's in New York. This year, the focus is on less on consumer AI, but more on operational enterprise. So, and I know destinations that are very keen on that part.
Yeah.
As in, how do we supercharge ourselves or restructure or re-engineer what we do using AI? And so a lot of discussion will be around that.
Great. Rafat, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much. It's been great to connect with you as well. Really appreciate you coming on.
All right. Thank you, Adam.
And thanks everybody for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, please don't forget to leave us a rating or a review. It helps us continue to bring you amazing guests like Rafat. Thanks everybody, and have a great week. If you followed me for a long time, you know that owned media is something that I'm incredibly passionate about. I believe that building communities through owned media is the future of the destination visitor relationship, and I really believe that that's where the industry is going. In this journey, I've discovered that there is a gap in my strategy, and that's the fact that if we don't have an adequate digital home for this community to be created, it's going to be a lot more difficult to connect that media to the correct audience. This is why a lot of the websites that are existing in the industry are no longer relevant and no longer working the way that they're supposed to. If your website is nothing more than a glorified directory or a series of listings about the different attractions, restaurants, dining establishments, hotels in your destination, you're only scratching the surface on what people are actually looking for from a destination website. The website of the future is a content hub, and of course it's going to be integrated with AI, but a content hub where people can go learn about your destination and interact with the content that is most relevant to where they are in their buyer journey. If all you have is a bunch of buttons that say buy now, buy now, buy now on your website, you are not serving your audience. We want to build a community of people who are passionate about visiting the destination, and we can build that relationship through content. I have partnered with an organization called Destination Core, and together we have reimagined the destination website to be this content hub that I'm describing, where you can build a community. And Destination Core is an incredible company out of the UK. They've built, at this point, hundreds of destination websites, and I'm so thrilled to have built this new reimagined website concept with them. We are rolling it out right now with several pilot clients, and it's going amazingly. I can't wait to show you those pilot projects. If you're interested in being one of the first to experience this new reimagined website concept for destinations, reach out to me at adam@thebrandrevolt.com, and we can get that conversation started.